Hello, my name is Jason Reichl, and you're listening to Risk Management Brick by Brick. I'm fascinated with people who are helping build and maintain the physical world around us. On each episode of this podcast, we'll dive in with a risk manager, speak to them about how technology plays a role in this process.
Thank you for joining me on Brick by Brick, Kathy. Why don't we start with a question that I like to ask, which is, if we look at your professional journey and we think about each of those bricks in that journey, what's something that you laid early on that you would recommend that other people do?
I think for me early on, I started at Aon, which was such a huge company. I was one of 500 people, young, smart people that wanted to become an account executive or a broker. And for me, that just didn't seem like the path I wanted. So I think really being able to take a risk. So I very early on kind of put my hand up and said, hey, is there something else I can do in a company like this that's growing and looking to innovate that isn't sort of like the major track of the company? And so that's really how I embarked on getting involved in technology, was because this is, I don't want to say how far back it was, in the 90s, in data and technology, we're just starting to become a topic in the insurance industry. And so I put my hand up for that early, and very early on had opportunities to start a business, run a business, be promoted, sell a business, grow a business, all those things. So I think along the way, I've always been willing to take risks on myself and on my team and what I believed in.
I love that fundamental break. Now, did you make that fundamental decision early and actually point it?
No, I think I did recognize it early, and it was a little bit of wanting to separate myself from the pack. So again, I just felt like I was looking around the room and a lot of people that looked like me that were smart. It's like, how can I accelerate and have more opportunity for leadership and make a difference?
And that's obviously gone a long way. You're now the CEO of Acclaimit. You've been in the industry since the 90s, as you said. But why don't we go through that journey? Like, what are you doing now with Acclaimit? How did you end up back in that space? And, as a technologist, especially back in the 90s to early 2000s, in a space where technology really was not championed the way it is now, how did that journey kind of happen for you? How did you weave through that?
Maybe the dirty little secret is it's never about the technology, right? It's really about outcomes. And so very early on, even in those early Aon days, it was like, we want to be able to provide more capability and advice to our customers. And how can we do that? Well, we need better data. We need better processes. So I just sort of gravitated to that. So I'm not a technologist per se. I just think I've always been a big believer that technology is a means to making our customers smarter, making us smarter, so that at the end of the day, they're a better risk and they have transparency around the decisions that they're making and understand the impacts. So started at Aon, we started a business around the category that is now risk management information systems. We didn't know it at the time. I was sort of doing that at Aon the same time, it was happening over at Marsh. So there were 2 or 3, sort of companies really starting up in this space. And we got really excited about it. We grew, this idea into a real business. At the end of the day, Aon ended up spinning it out. It later became Ventiv Technology. I ran that for a while and then decided to just kind of take a break from that and wanted to shift gears entirely. Again, sort of took a calculated risk that I felt like I had done a lot, kind of helped create a category, started a business line, grown it, sold it, led that under private equity. And so took kind of a left turn, still in insurance, but went to work for RMIS Specialty Group, which at the time was 4 or 5 years into their journey from being a startup wholesaler. So was there 5 years, 5 to 10. So went from $0 to $1 billion in 10 years, was there for them going public, and moved into very different roles. So started a digital business there, trading small commercial E&S, excess and surplus lines business completely online. So completely digital business. So hadn't known anything about the wholesale side of the business or E&S. And to digitize that business, you have to learn a lot about it. So really cool business that we grew there. And at that time, joined the board of Acclaimant. So Acclaimant was the first, what I'll call non-legacy RMIS provider. So the team founded the company. We're doing some really interesting things. And we're looking for a board member that sort of had some experience in the space. So working at RMIS Specialty Group in this very different role, but joined Acclaimant on the board. And after I was on the board for a couple of years, I just became such a believer in the industry needed another player, needed some modern technology that could move faster, deliver results faster, deliver value almost from day one for clients. And so after I was on the board for a couple of years, David and the founding team said, you're contributing a lot as a board member. Why don't you just join full time?
I love that, because what we don't ever talk about is, where do categories come from? The best categories come from within industry, because there's a problem. And then innovators come in and go, hey, there may be a more efficient way to look at this problem and solve this problem without all the legacy that maybe you have as Aon, as an example, or when they went through this transition. So that makes a lot of sense. Trust Layer is in a similar category, right? Which is digital risk transfer. is a thing that, was in the most highly sought after enterprise softwares, but not available to most of the market. We came in and started to disrupt that. At the same time, we took an approach of trying to learn from the industry and really become insurance experts. So we, brought a lot of people with insurance expertise onto the team, mashed with technologists. What's your makeup for Acclaimant? How do you balance the deep need for understanding of a complex industry and the need for innovation?
Yeah, I mean, that's sort of exactly where Acclaimant was. I think I joined the board because they were looking for somebody that had the domain expertise, understood not just the needs of the risk manager, but the distribution models in insurance. Because at the end of the day, we've got to get this product out. And Acclaimant had a very strong base of entrepreneur, startup, and tech. And so that's really where I just felt like there was such a strong match. And, to the credit, the founding team saw it too. And like, hey, can you join? So we really try to balance that. So we've brought over some folks that I've worked with in the past as an example, almost feeling like this is like a 2.0 opportunity. Like we've built a similar business, but now the technology's better. Frankly, there are more customers. Back in the day, this was something that was reserved for Fortune 1000. It's like, we always say everybody deserves the right to be a good risk. And so we're now, because of our ability with the technology and ability to implement quickly, we can sell to middle market customers and get them a solution that they deserve as well. It's not just the big guys that deserve to understand their risk.
As they grow, it makes the investment they have to put into it a lot less, right? Often I talk to other technology companies like, you could do this now for, it seems like a lot of dollar signs. But in reality, if you wait, this is going to cost you, the $5 signs later, let alone take a restructuring and all this work that you could put this software in and have good hygiene from the very beginning.
That's absolutely right. When we talk to first-time buyers, which are a lot of our customers, we always say, let's get started. We don't have to solve world hunger here, but let's pick one or two problems that are really pervasive for you or that you see as being problems in the future. Let's start solving that, and then we'll grow with you. And again, having that deep risk management and industry background, we can almost help sort of guide them down that path. But we just want them to get started.
When I think, you've been the CEO for around 18 months now or so, when you're going through that kind of significant transition, new CEO, even though you were on the board, so you probably had some ties to the organization already, what's a lesson or a moment that you look back on and go, okay, that was pivotal over the last 18 months and a decision that you feel is right that maybe hasn't paid off yet, but you're still pointed in that direction?
I mean, I think this may be the case in many companies. I certainly felt like in the early days of InsurTech, this was the case where not everybody understood exactly where they fit. And so you almost try to be too much to too many people. So I think the thing that we really have focused on the last 18 months at Acclaimant is getting much more focused. What are we? More importantly, what aren't we? And, learning to say no to ourselves or learning to say no to a prospect and saying that just doesn't fit. And so when you narrow your focus a bit and you really understand who you are and where you drive value, now we can actually get a lot more momentum. All our investment dollars are going to the path that we want it to go to, as opposed to getting diluted by trying to please everybody and kind of figure out our path. So I think that clarity helped us on so many levels. Customer satisfaction, product, we're getting product out faster now because we're much more focused. And the team has more to gather around. It's like they know what we're doing. They know this is our focus. This is why we're all here every day. They know why. And so sort of bringing the team along that journey. So I think probably a natural transition from a lot of startups that are trying to keep a lot of balls in the air to figure out what sticks. I think it was just the right time for us to really be very clear on what our focus was.
I live in Silicon Valley, been in many startups as a leader. We often say, oh, focus is everything. But in reality, we're chasing leads around and we're not trying to define what the software is, who is it for, and so that those audience members can find it and be successful, right? And then have that dictate the growth of the organization. So I think that's really an important thing. One thing that I was thinking while you were talking about that is, as you're building this company, I was thinking about the fact that even 10 years ago, the average age of a startup founder was 24, and now it's 35. So the entire tech industry is also maturing. So I think we're seeing now the insurance industry be hungry for innovation at the same time as the tech market is matured enough to actually support something as critically important as insurance.
That's right. Well, and I think the whole idea of InsurTech has matured, to your point, kind of the whole concept 10 or 15 years ago. It was like, we're going to disintermediate the insurance agent.
All the brokers are going to get fired.
All the brokers and insurers are going to be fired. There's no need for them anymore. All of our insurance policies are going to be completely digitized. Claims, same thing. And we've all matured to say that's just not the case. So this is, it's a complex industry. Relationships matter, insights matter, knowledge matter, but there's a lot of things that we can do much more efficiently and provide a lot more transparency. So I think everything has matured to that level, and having line of sight on what set of problems we're going to solve, which is we have very good line of sight on, and what things belong to somebody else, that was really the trick for us.
I think from my perspective, I believe that competition. There's no such thing as competition. Every piece of software, even if you have competitors, are solving something in a different way. And more so, we should be looking at, are we servicing the industry the right way, and hone in on how you believe that gets serviced, and allow the customers to decide on what thing is going to match their, when we talk about risk, we talk about risk appetite, and that's a personal defined thing for that business. And your technology and everything around that should start with, how do you define your risk appetite? How can these tools support that and bring insights to you from that space? These are questions from the audience. So let's see what they do. How do you balance innovation with risk in industries that are traditionally risk averse? How do you bring product to market when your audience is risk managers or people who write claims, or that seems like a very tricky thing to navigate.
Yeah. I mean, I think at the end of the day, again, we think about it less as technology and more about what problems are we solving. And where we serve a need is we're helping them be more efficient in their work process, and we're giving transparency largely on their data. So they want to understand their data so they can make decisions. So we're actually helping them reduce the risk by giving them transparency on things that otherwise they might not be confident about making a decision about, why losses are happening, where losses are happening, what type of program should I be self-insuring, how much should I be in a captive? It's like you need information to be able to make those kinds of decisions. So we're providing that.
You're providing the structure because they already had all that information somewhere in the ether around, right?
That's right. So it's putting structure around that so that they can make those decisions with more confidence, stand behind them, and then measure the results. So that's really the way we think about it. So I don't think that risk aversion comes into play as much on the technology. What probably comes into play more is they're not used to buying stuff, like this. And so it's almost like the internal process to get stuff bought is maybe where we're pushing a rock up the hill versus the concept makes sense to them and they're kind of yearning for it.
I definitely feel that too. I feel like I'm having to teach, as we have talked to many risk managers on this podcast, and they are moving more into senior leadership where they're maybe directly communicating with the CEO in a way they didn't used to. They're now buying product the same way that we saw marketers or head of sales buy product. And they have no ability to do that in a way. So I'm still seeing really dumb RFPs. I'm still seeing really things that are like, can you do this feature? And it's like all of your vendors are going to mark checks next to this and it doesn't really mean anything, right? And I think when I think about selling into a risk-averse industry, it's like we have to educate them on not covering their ass, so to speak, on the feature set, but instead looking at what problems are you trying to solve and ask those questions to find out how is this going to be slotted into your business. I think I'm responsible back from Salesforce days. So I think I'm responsible for data is everything, collect all the data, but we never kind of told the audience what they should do when they have all that data. What business decisions and problems can you solve now that you couldn't solve? And that's why I'm so excited about AI and other tools, even though there's risks there that, we have to cover. And I tell risk managers, don't just put those tools into the workspace. But I think we are at a final point where we can take all this data and start to make actions on it. And I think that's going to be a fundamental shift for every industry. I think in the insurance industry, I always think about, well, when you base everything on the actuary model and now you can get real-time data, how is that going to change how policies are written, how they're reviewed, all these kind of things that we thought were laws of how this industry works, and maybe they're not. And so I'm kind of interested in what you see for both Acclaimant and the industry as we move forward in this next 5 years.
Well, I mean, a couple of things. I think you just made a lot of great points. I think one of the things we really try to do at Acclaimant, and particularly for those first-time buyers of a RMIS, a risk management information system, is we're really consultative. So we try to get away from the feature, what's the list of features, and really talk about, again, tell us about your risk management program, your safety program, tell us what you're worried about, what keeps your CFO up at night. Let's think about those things. And we'll sort of come back with an idea of, this is what we've seen other customers do. Here's 3 priorities we think we heard from you that we think we could solve pretty quickly. And we really consult with them. It's not, we get feedback all the time. It's like your demos, in the end, we'll do a demo, but we don't start with the demo. We start with all those conversations so we can come back and provide sort of a solution and a path for them so they understand where we're going to start and where we're going to go. So I think that serves the industry well, that approach. We get so much feedback that, again, these buyers that might not be used to buying something like that appreciate this consultation. And this is even on a middle market sale. We're going to take them down that path, not just to get started, but going forward as well. Here's some other best practices. Here's the things that you can think about next. So I think that partnering with someone that can sort of lay that path out is really important, which feels not like a software sale.
Yeah. Well, it is how all software sales are going, right? Being connected in Silicon Valley, which is our customers are so tired of technology being the solution because it's never the solution. And people need to connect the loop, right? And that starts with good discovery. That starts with good, what are you trying to solve? I think this is something that I'm trying to educate my sales team on and my marketing team at Trust Layer, but I'm also going out and doing speaking engagements with others, which is consultative sales are required in any industry, but specifically in this industry, when your software may be, let's say $50,000, but that buyer's never bought anything that's $50,000 before. And that company didn't even think about this as an innovation center until the last 3 years.
That's right.
And so you have to really be willing to roll up your sleeves and be consultative to sales. So I have the philosophy that we're going to see sales engineers move more into sales roles, into more consultative. All of our customers say that the consultative aspect of what we do is also why they choose us, right? And I think that's kind of what ties like companies together in this space that I feel like are good technology partners and solve problems together.
And I think if I could just jump in there, I think it's harder to do. It's much easier to have a scripted demo, walk into a meeting, do a demo, and even as a buyer go, yeah, it has the 10 things I want and move on. Sometimes our risk managers or our buyers are challenged with stepping back and saying, don't tell me that you want a report that looks like this. Tell me why. What are you going to do with it? Again, what problem are you solving? Who are the stakeholders in this? Who else has an input into this? And really force that conversation up a level. Then we'll talk about a solution. So even trying to get them and us to stop talking about solutions and bring it up a level first is a challenge.
I totally agree. It comes from the industry. A lot of times I still see customers in market looking for products like ours because their IT team has a backlog, because they can't build this internally.
Right.
Not because they don't believe that building it internally would be maybe the worst option for
Right.
them. So I'm finding that when they come to us, it's still very much in that kind of phase where they're still not educated enough on how to buy the software like this. So I think in the long run, I think your strategy is really intelligent. I think that it allows an enterprise system to be tailored down to the mid-market. So my last question here, is there a difference between an enterprise software and a mid-market software for you? Or are you laying the foundation that you're going to be able to service the whole market? I know we talked about tailoring, but how are you looking at that from a Acclaimant lens?
Yeah, we absolutely are. I mean, we serve the enterprise as well. I think what we saw, and again, this is maybe 18 months ago, what we saw was a real opportunity with middle market because no one was serving it. And we felt like, again, these companies needed to be better risked and have better transparency on their processes and their data. And there was no one serving it. So we kind of jumped on that and still in many ways are very much alone there because of our price point and our time to value. Some of the legacy players really struggle to get there. But we've always had enterprise in mind and serve a number of enterprise customers as well. The problems are the same. They're just bigger. And so we built the product and the suite to serve the enterprise in mind. But again, I think uniquely can bring it down to the middle market.
I kind of set you up for this question because my philosophy is when you're solution selling, you start to realize it's not about the traditional firmographics of a company. It's about the problems you solve. And if it's for the Walmarts of the world, because they have the same problems as a mid-market construction company, then that's okay because you're actually starting from a different vantage point than trying to firmographic your segments down. And I think that's where software is going, which is what problems do you have and what is the best place to solve those problems?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we kind of started because this category has always existed for enterprise and large clients. So we kind of understood that. What we did was start there and then figure out how to bring it down to middle market at a price point and a time to value that's acceptable for a first-time buyer.
Let's do some risky or too risky. All right. These questions you didn't prepare for at all. So allowing AI tools to assess vendor risk without a human review. Risky or too risky?
Too risky.
Too risky. Let's talk about that. Is that because you feel like AI can't make consistent decisions and a person can? Because that's also proven not to be real. So why is it too risky?
I'm probably on the conservative side of AI, and it's like, what's the hurry? We've got time, so let's start a walk before we run, and let's validate that maybe it is okay. Maybe a year from now, we say, yeah, it is okay because we've seen the evidence build that it can make the right decision. But at this point, there's not a rush.
Well, I would say also too risky. So I believe what we should be doing is a human should review the top 50%, let's say, of vendors, if they're doing vendor risk management, that are critical to your business and allow AI to check the stuff that you were never really going to check anyways. Right? We need to be real. I feel like software companies we have to market this idea of fear all the time. And when in reality, when we look at this, it's about protecting the highest risks. There has to be the risk matrix overlay on where you spend your time, even in the world of AI. And what are you going to trust to AI, right? I wouldn't trust my biggest project to AI. I would make sure that a human who I trust is involved so we can improve the models. So I agree too risky. Expanding into a new market without a localized compliance strategy. This is for our audience. So right now we're seeing a lot of growth through acquiring, and then you go into a new market. You're a roofing company, you're this roofing conglomerate. You go in and start buying all these things, and you go in and you try to use their people with your thing, but you don't have any idea about that. So compliance, localized compliance strategy. Do you think that's an important thing? Risky or too risky?
I think it's risky. I mean, I don't think you can let that get in the way of doing what your business needs. You've just got to go into it with a lens that you understand that there's going to be risks, and you've got to have a way to, identify them and manage them, but it can't get in the way of your business.
Kind of like what we were talking about when InsurTech came into the industry and would try to disrupt everything, right? You have to assume that you need to come in with a plan, but that plan needs to be flexible to what's happening. You need to be listening to that local market. Yeah, that's pretty easy.
So how would you have answered that one?
Risky, not too risky.
All right.
I would have done the same strategy.
So far, we're 2 for 2.
Yeah. This is about leadership. Promoting someone to executive leadership based solely on performance, not leadership readiness. Risky or too risky?
Risky.
So how do you give them the readiness if they don't have it already?
Well, I think you've got to put them in a position where they're going to be set up for success. And so, I mean, every organization looks different, but you think somebody has the potential and they have some of the experience, you've got to partner them up with, a mentor, or depending on who they report to, maybe that person can really provide the guidance and leadership and, a performance plan for the next year to sort of help them get through and be very conscious of what leadership opportunities you want them to have and where it's going to be okay for them to lead and maybe fail or lead and be mentored. So I've never worked for a company that every leader that you promote is ready in every sense of the word.
What about as CEO? Do you feel like you should change your expectations based on their experience for a new leader, or should you hold them accountable to the role?
I think it's somewhere in the middle. I think at some point you have to say, if this person can't get there in 2 years, then they're really, really not ready. But if you say like, hey, we're going to get you there in a year, and in the meantime, here's how we're going to still achieve the goals of the company, but we're going to get you there where a year from now, you've got to be able to stand alone.
Trusting your intuition over data in a pivotal strategic decision, risky or too risky?
I'm intuition.
Yeah?
Yeah. Maybe it's just my level of experience. And so that might not be for anybody. This is just Kathy speaking. I'm very intuitive about things, but I think at this point in my life, a lot of it's been based on the experience and understanding the data and understanding the trends. So my intuition's very much guided by that.
Hypothesis person, and then
maybe
I
that's
look
a way
for
to say
data.
it.
If I don't have data, maybe I'll still pivot, like go into that. But I will always try to look for data that is an indicator. So I'm a big fan of momentum-based KPIs versus KPIs that solidify if we're doing well or not. I'm always looking for what's the tick that I can say we had a 10% improvement this week or a 40%, but it's coming from an intuition place. So I think I agreed.
Yeah, I think I lead with that as well, versus leading 100% with data-driven decisions. Because at the end of the day, those don't tell the full story either. So it's got to be both. But.
Yeah, and you can't throw one out. Last question for you. What's a piece of advice that you would give to someone starting? We talked about take risks. So what's another piece of advice that you give to people starting in this career? You have a lot of people from risk management universities that watch.
I think in any job, I've worked in different types of companies. I've worked in different growth stages, from startup to mid-size to global Fortune 200. It's never just about you. Surround yourself with good people. I think particularly for people younger in their career, I often say, particularly if you're going into a big company, pick your boss. There's no one that has a bigger influence on you, particularly early in your career, than that sort of first level manager in terms of training, helping you gain confidence, positioning you for new opportunities, positioning you, around a firm. So I think for me, it's always about the people and the team and the culture that are going to help you succeed or not, that are beyond what you can control.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you very much for the time.
Thank you.
Risk Management Brick by Brick is brought to you by TrustLayer. Find out how TrustLayer manages risk so that the people can build the physical world around us. Head over to trustlayer.io, and then make sure to subscribe to Risk Management Brick by Brick on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. On behalf of the TrustLayer team, thank you for listening.